It's no secret that Maine's rocky coastline is among the most beautiful on earth. But among these craggy cliff walls that tower high above the Atlantic Ocean, you'll find one of the coolest little seabirds I've ever had the privilege of photographing. This week we're going to head out to Machias Seal Island to photograph the Atlantic puffin in its natural nesting habitat. I'm your host, Doug Gardner, and your wild photo adventure starts now. While this week's show is primarily going to be about photographing the Atlantic puffin, I can't hardly visit the beautiful coastline of Maine without taking advantage of getting some great scenic shots. We're here this morning at the Kippertie Head State Park, just north of Cutler. Cutler is where we're going to be heading out of to go visit the puffins later on this morning. Let's see if we can get a few shots. This is spectacular. This is what I think about when I think of the coastline of Maine. We've got a heavy fog bank rolling in and the dark cliff rock walls. We've got the spruce and fir trees coming right down to the ocean. This is spectacular. It's going to be a little bit of an exposure challenge here because I want to control the contrast between the dark rocks and the bright foggy sky. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a graduated neutral density filter. And if you've never used these can really add a lot of punch to your photographs. A graduated neutral density filter is a clear piece of glass that has a treated area at the top that's darker, and then as it gets to the bottom of the glass it becomes completely clear. And what we'll do is we will drop this in your filter holder down in front of your lens. Now I'm using a 17-40 lens here because it's a beautiful wide angle shot. I'm shooting it at 17 millimeters. And when I slide this down over the lens, the clear area will have no effect on the exposure of the picture. You want to get a base exposure first. And generally what I do is I'll get a base exposure on a neutral tone subject in this scene as a starting point. From that point I'll slide this filter down over the lens so that the dark area only affects the sky. Now we have a big rocky cliff that's towering up here high on my right and dipping down at an angle to the ocean, so most of my bright area is in this upper left corner of my frame. So you can, with the filter holder, you can rotate it right or left and change the angle of your horizon line. So if I slant this just a little bit, it only affects the bright part of the sky, this upper corner. Wow, now that really adds some punch. It's still kind of bright, so the nice thing about neutral density filters is you can stack them until you get the effect you want. This is a 2-stop graduated neutral density, and this one is a 3-stop. And we'll slide this one down. Now that's a total of 5 stops neutral density. Rotate it slightly. Yeah, now that's the effect I want. All right, when determining exposure in a situation like this, I always like to start at 100 ISO. I only bump my ISO up if it's absolutely necessary. I'm starting with a f-stop of f22. Because I want to try to get a maximum depth of field. I want everything from this nice spruce trees here in foreground to infinity in sharp focus. My shutter speed is falling right now at 1/15 of a second. Now when you're trying to determine focus in a situation like this, there's a lot of different rules out there. I've heard about calculating distances and reading distances off your lens. I don't do that. I keep it simple. I basically look at my scene through the camera and I visually divide the frame into thirds. And I focus on something 1/3 out into my frame, and with a high f-stop like f/22, you'll be there. Trust your camera. Wow, this is spectacular. We're running out of time. We got to go shoot puffins this morning, so let's see if we can find a few more things before we have to go. Well, we just made it across the Gulf of Maine from Cutler to Machias Seal Island. I'm here with the lighthouse keeper, Ralph Eldridge. Ralph, tell me a little bit about the island and what's so significant about this place.
Well, probably the biggest thing is a seabird breeding colony. It's the southernmost puffin breeding colony here in the Gulf of Maine. And it's also, on a limited basis, it's open to for public visitation.
When we came ashore, it was obvious how you have this place laid out for very designated boardwalks. I guess it's real important for people to understand, even though you can visit a place like this, we got to limit our impact on this place.
Yeah, everybody's presence has a certain amount of impact, and we try to minimize that. Through the Maine breeding season, it's limited to a maximum of 30 people a day from only a couple of boats, and their length of their stay is limited too to a maximum of 3 hours. So it's all intended to lessen the impact.
Right.
Keep it to a level that doesn't seem to be detrimental to the birds.
Exactly.
And so far, you know, what we're doing seems to be okay.
Well, tell me a little bit about the lighthouse. How old is this? I mean, it is a working lighthouse,
Yeah,
right?
This particular structure, if I remember right, it was built in 1915. We've had a light here since 1832. There used to be 2 of them, and they were arranged, and anyone that's boating would appreciate what was range lights, where you line 2 lights up to give you your direction. When this one was built, because it's taller and it was leading to confusion because of the height and whatnot, they did away with the second light. This is the only one that's still staffed in the Maritimes.
Right. I understand the job of light keeper is kind of a dying breed, and you're one of those.
Pretty much. The Canadian Coast Guard has, I don't know the exact number, probably 30-odd manned stations left, split between Newfoundland and BC, and this is the only one in the Maritimes. But yeah, there's not most of the people coming in. There's not a whole lot of people that have been at it long term.
Right, right.
You know, most of us are at or beyond retirement age now, so people are coming in sort of more short term.
Well, Ralph, I'm looking forward to getting in a blind. I appreciate you inviting me ashore, and
enjoy your birds.
Thank you. All right, we just made it into the blind out here on Machias Seal Island to try to get some photographs of razorbills, Atlantic puffins, and possibly either some northern gannets or some murres. It's a really neat setup. There are literally thousands of birds here. We're filming them and taking pictures of them in their natural nesting habitat.
As soon as you come on the island, you'll be greeted by the lighthouse keeper, Ralph. And he's very passionate about this island, keeping the lighthouse operable and clean, and also about these birds. He's actually a wildlife photographer himself. I did not know that till I met him earlier this morning. But he's very passionate about these birds, keeping them safe, keeping their nesting habitat intact and unmolested. And for that reason, there are these permanent blinds put up, and there's looks like 4 or 5 blinds. Birds are completely used to them, and he has paths, that little boardwalks that go straight to these blinds. You're not allowed to get off the paths. You're not allowed to stop on the path on the way to the blind. When you go to the blind, you walk straight to it and get in it, close the door. When you come out, same thing. You do not stop along the way until you get back to the staging area, which is back near the actual lighthouse. They're amazing little birds. They look almost like penguins. The way they stand upright, they're short, stocky birds with their legs that are positioned to the rear of their body, which causes them to stand upright, almost like a penguin. But in reality, they have absolutely no relation to the penguin. The biggest distinction between the razorbill and the puffin, the puffin's a little bit smaller. Body shape, almost identical. The color patterns are pretty close to identical, black back, white front, white breast, but the bills are different, and the razorbill is slightly larger, only about 1.5 inches, 2 inches larger. The razorbill's bill is more of a long hook with kind of a flat edge on it, and the puffin has a very chunky, wide bill that's brightly colored, with oranges and yellows all mixed in, very, very pretty, and bright orange feet. The first thing you'll notice about these blinds, they're very small, and we're actually having to shoot this much different than we do any of the other shows. David Reagan, my chief camera guy, he's sitting right here beside me, and he's shooting right out the side here. I'm actually having to shoot this on a stationary camera, which is attached to my tripod. We have such space restraints that makes it very difficult to do. But these are permanent blinds that have been here a long, long time. The birds are very accustomed to the blinds being here and people being in them. I literally have right now birds inside my minimal focal distance, 3-4 feet away from the blind. I can hear, if you listen carefully, you'll hear a ch-ch-ch sound. That is actually footsteps of razorbills and puffins walking around the roof of this blind. This is absolutely an amazing place to come photograph. They have a funny little kind of a purr type call, a little moan, kind of a cross between a purr and a moan. And from a distance, I keep thinking I'm hearing somebody with a weed eater, a gas weed eater. But it's actually these birds. Quite comical. Access to this island can become a problem depending on the weather. I was warned several times that when you book one of these trips out here, you could get out here and actually never be able to get on the island because of weather and wind and rough seas. And but that's the chance you have to take. There's several thousand birds on this island, and we're at the point of the nesting season where the chicks are large and they have to eat a lot, so parents are in and out a lot trying to bring food back and forth. However, we are late in the morning getting here just due to logistical issues of the long boat ride out here, and so we're past the prime feeding time, so I'm not seeing a lot of feeding going on at this moment. Both the razorbill and the puffin have almost identical color patterns. Black on top and their back, and bright pure white on their chest and their underside. So this becomes a contrast exposure nightmare. There's so much contrast between the black and the white, and we have full sun today. I'm basically shooting Sunday 16, 1000 at 5.6, and then I'm stopping down just about a third of a stop, and that's really kind of giving me a nice balance between the pure whites and the blacks. It's going to be something that I have to deal with in Photoshop later to bring some of those contrast levels closer together. Nevertheless, this is a beautiful, beautiful situation, unbelievable photographic opportunities, and I encourage each and every one of you to come enjoy Machias Seal Island here off the coast of Maine for yourself. You will not regret it. It's $100 a day for 3 hours on the island. There's lots of other things to see. There's 5 or 6 other species of birds on the island to see. You got seals, bald eagles, beautiful scenery, and as we're going back into Maine, you'll get to see that nice rugged coastline. Here's a puffin right here in wildflowers, very nice. Be a nice vertical. I hear lots of toenails on top of the blind. Oh, that's cute. I'm primarily using a 500mm lens, but you don't need that at all here. I mean, it does open other possibilities at longer ranges. However, the birds are so close, you can get great photographs with short to mid-range zoom lenses. You hear all the feet on the roof. Oh, we got some great interaction right here between these two puffins. Another shot I really wanted to get, I wanted to get a lot of flight shots. However, I did not realize how tight these blinds were going to be. And it's really hard to pan with these long lenses through these little tiny holes they have in the blinds. I mean, the blinds are built really well for photography. However, for doing long pans of birds in flight, it's really difficult. When you're trying to focus on these birds in flight, whether you're trying to manual focus or autofocus, it doesn't matter. You still need to try to spot the bird when he's way off in the distance and tracking into you. Keep the lens on the bird the whole time as he comes in. If you wait till the last minute till the bird surprises you and he's right here on top of you, you'll never get him in focus. Because I'm shooting out of this particular blind and you're not allowed to leave, this particular porthole, I have a very narrow field of view, so and very narrow swing right to left. So I'm limited to only the birds that are flying pretty much directly at me. And that's not a lot of them. Most of them are flying crossways to me, so they're in my frame about a half a second. When you're composing these birds, you want to try to pick subjects that are on fairly clean rocks. These birds stay here all the time, so a lot of the rocks are covered in poo. So you want to try to find rocks that have very little of that on them, and something other color element in the picture. I'm using both some of the green vegetation and some of the blue of the Atlantic Ocean in the background. It's really some amazing, amazing compositions here. Anytime you're shooting a bird like this, I mean, the bird is so beautiful to begin with, the picture doesn't need anything else. However, you always want to clean up those backgrounds. You want the backgrounds to be simple, clean, and if something in the background doesn't add to the picture, it means it takes away from your picture. So I always like to try to blur my backgrounds out, make them nice and smooth and soft. That way it kind of makes the subject pop out of the frame. I'm shooting 100 ISO at 1250 shutter speed at actually 5.6 because I want to blur my backgrounds and make those nice and soft.
All right. Another wild photo adventure, successful. Well, my trip to Maine has been nothing short of amazing, and I can't wait to get back to this wild place. I've had some great photographic opportunities, and I encourage each and every one of you to plan your own photo adventure here to Maine. More information about this week's show is available online. And remember, it's not just about the photograph, it's the outdoor experience. I'm your host, Doug Gardner. Thank you for joining me on another wild photo adventure. You'll find one of the coolest little seabirds I've ever had the chance of photographing. This week, I need to tell you what that is.
You hear all the feet on the roof? Okay, I think I can talk now.
This morning we're at the Kippertie Revola National Park, State Park. Hours to photograph the great coastline of